Well, hello and greetings from a sunny London. And today we have a magazine called The Zine, which is got astonishing reach. It deals with architecture, designs, interiors, interviews. And today it's an article by Amy Peacock about a book called Brutalist London, which I adore, but if you hate the architecture, the writing is probably amazing. So bear with me. There will probably be some hiccups along the way, but I'm not going to revise it. I'm just going to read it as is, warts and all. Here we go. So Brutalist London book illustrates lots of ways to be brutalist. From concrete council housing to monumental theatres, Brutalist London documents the myriad examples of brutalism in the UK capital. Here, author Owen Hopkins selects 7 of his favourites featured in the book. Published by Blue Crow Media, Brutalist London includes photography by Nigel Green of over 50 post-war concrete buildings, from significant civic buildings to everyday homes, schools and libraries. Hopkins hopes that the Brutalist London book will introduce readers to the myriad forms of London's brutalist architecture and shines a spotlight on their architects. By the way, Open House, the weekend of London architecture, has open houses, and it's really worth going to see the Czech embassy in Notting Hill. But anyway, so there's a photograph of the Alexandra Road estate, which is amazing if you've not been. Anyway, so there are, the book shows, lots of ways to be brutalist, Hopkins told The Zine. Looking across the 58 buildings as a whole, I'm always struck by the range of forms, scales, and even materials, not just concrete, but brick and even timber, he continued. I hope the book will expand readers' understanding of both what brutalism is and the different roles it plays in the city. Often recognized as having monolithic structures and exposed concrete, the brutalist style of architecture emerged in the 1950s in reconstruction projects after World War II. Hopkins said that many of the buildings featured in Brutalist London are deeply integrated into their surroundings, the antithesis of the stereotype often tied to brutalism as standing out as sole structures. He likened the impact of brutalism on London to the works of architects Christopher Wren and Nicholas Hawksmoor. There's a fabulous Hawksmoor church in Spitalfields, where I am. Anyway, Wren is most known for designing St. Paul's Cathedral, and Hawksmoor, who was mentored by Wren, designed numerous churches in the city. Brutalism, here we are. So it aims to showcase the wide range of examples of brutalism in London. That's talking about the Trellick Tower in Notting Hill, which is also actually quite a phenomenal building. Inside is quite something. Anyway, brutalism emerged conceptually, and in some instances quite literally too, from the rubble of the Blitz, and the result is buildings that are interwoven into the social and cultural life of the city, said Hopkins. I wrote a book on Nicholas Hawksmoor a few years ago and remained fascinated by the way he and Christopher Wren redefined London through architecture at the turn of the 17th century, he continued. For me, the brutalist moment picked up that torch and the belief in architecture's transformative possibilities to redefine the city once again, 300 years later. Read on 7 buildings selected by Hopkins that feature brutalist London. The first one, Housden House 65 by Brian Housden. A building of superabundant strangeness, especially amid the context of the grand terraces overlooking Hampstead Ponds. Oh, Hampstead Heath is quite an adventure. If you're ever in London, go for a stroll. It's quite superb. Architecture conceived as a series of interlocking planes and volumes. Housden later wrote that a private house is a little city, a description that could not be more fitting of his own complex and multi-layered composition set above the landscape. Yeah, it's really interesting because the ponds, the Hampstead, in fact, the ponds is a particular part of Hampstead Heath, which is a kind of a rural part of London. So you've got these concrete structures right alongside these brutalist structures. It's just that's quite superb, really. I'm not sure what the neighbours at the time thought. Anyway, so, and then the Southbank Centre. Gosh, that's a really good photograph of it, actually. Anyway, sorry. Southbank Centre, Queen Elizabeth Hall, Purcell Room, and Hayward Gallery 68 by London County Council Architects Department. From the beginning, the building was conceived as somewhere that would help facilitate new forms of culture, with the exterior decks intended to provide platforms for spontaneous activity. With the exception of the skateboard in the Undercroft, it never quite worked out that way. Yet this bloody-minded disregard for comfort and practicality is actually what gives the building its energy. Then we have Peronet House in 1970 by Roger Walters, one of the last surviving elements of Elephant and Castle's post-war reimagining, a scissor-section system with flats split across 3 levels and access via a half level, visible in the projecting windows on the end elevations. The whole composition was raised up on pilotis and a podium. So it's pilotis, I think. So it stood away from the traffic. Although the material styling and finishes are towards the rougher end of brutalism, it is a building that is full of humanity, a place of life and community. I wonder what's going to happen with the redevelopment. What happened, in fact, with the redevelopment of Elephant and Castle. Now the elephant's gone. Anyway, be that as it may, here we are. We're back at Camberwell Submarine, 74, by Ted Hollenby and Bill Jacoby. Rather than try hideaway, this is an idiosyncratic celebration of the communal heating that fed the surrounding Myattsfield North housing estate, of which it is the last surviving element. In contrast to the surrounding estate's yellow London stock brick with slate roofs, you can hear this as an architectural slanted magazine, the Submarine stood apart as a wonderfully sculptural and avowedly brutalist statement of communal values in concrete. Then we have Salters Hall by Basil Spence, Bonington Collins and John S. Bonington Partnership. An example of how brutalism was used by establishment institutions, a building of brilliant crystalline white concrete surrounded by the ubiquitous steel and glass and the dark brown of the adjacent Barbican. Spence conceived a vigorous composition of interlocking horizontal and vertical forms, shaped by an almost functionless relation to the configuration of interior spaces. Then we have the National Theatre, 1977, by Dennis Lasden and Partners. An almost geological composition of horizontal terraces layered on top of each other, all in raw board-marked concrete. A building, if you've got a paper on architecture, this should help you. A building full of geometrical vigour, but with little of the roughness one often associates with brutalism, reflecting in a curious way something of the work of Lasden's great hero Hawksmoor. The Barbican Estate, 82, by Chamberlain, Powell and Bonn. A building that magically combines the futuristic with medieval allusions. The architectural language is one of massiveness, with bush-hammered piers and beams on a gargantuan scale. Beyond this, and in contrast to the futuristic feel, there are a number of medieval allusions, arrow-slit windows, ramparts, and massive Romanesque piers, which have the appearance of serving to keep the city out. Yeah, that really is. It's very effective for that purpose. And we've come to the end. And all this photography is by Nigel Green, or maybe with this particular one. Anyway, that's it for today, folks.